From ABC News Radio, KMET 1490 in Southern California. This is Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgensen.
Welcome out to Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio. I am your host, Tyler Jorgensen, and I'm here for another week, and I'm excited to be here. Today, I have a really cool guest, Portia Jackson, who PhD, CFP, client attraction strategist, and all other kinds of accolades, praise, amazing things. Super excited to have you out on the show, Portia. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So for a long time, I used to not put any of those things behind my name because I don't have as many fancy ones as you, but I only do it when I go to like events where people have it. But you've got a lot of education and all of these things. But when did you first realize that you were an entrepreneur?
Ooh, I think I first realized I was an entrepreneur in my first corporate job because it just felt so wrong. It wasn't even a job yet. It was an internship. And I was like, these 3 months cannot go fast enough. This is not what I was meant to do. And I always had something on the side, whether it was real estate or business or selling something in high school. It was always something. It wasn't the pre-laid out path. It was like, get a good job, go to school, get a great, good job. Well, I probably said that backwards, but I knew the whole time. It just wasn't until I decided to acknowledge it and step into it that I became one.
Yeah. But so a lot of people, when they that have the entrepreneurial personality or that decide they're going to go that way, don't have quite as much education as you, right? Now, you did at least 2 out of 3 times choose a great school. We're super proud of you for that. And so when you finished up a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Michigan, but you decided to keep going. Right. Yes. Were you already at that point, you're like, I think I'm going to do something on my own? Or was that still your kind of like, I'm going to get ready for a career at that point?
No, it was still a get ready for a career. So going to grad school and get my PhD had 2 purposes. One, I've always loved teaching, and I still do that to this day in the way I do my courses and everything. So that's always been there. And the other 2 was to delay being an adult. It was like the acceptable way to not actually get a job yet, but still be productive and something my parents could be proud of, honestly.
Thank you for being self-aware, because so many people do that, but don't realize that that's what they're doing.
Yeah, no, it was totally delaying the adult thing. I was like, I could just keep going to school.
Yeah, it's like, well, these student loans start once I stop being a student. What if I just be a student? And grad school was completely paid for. So that was better. It wasn't even like I'm paying to delay. I was being paid to delay being an adult. Yeah. Yeah. And that brought you out here to the West Coast. So welcome out here to LA.
Thank you. LA all day.
So you're still studying though. You're doing smart stuff. What do you still use in your business today that you learned through all those years of formal education?
I mean, all of it, honestly, because being trained as an engineer, we're trained to be problem solvers, to look for solutions to problems that are continually there. And I'm still using that to this day. I find solutions when I was running my digital marketing agency of how to help other advisors get more clients. I'm still using that same solution, process-oriented way of finding that solution with my clients when they want to figure out what to do with their finances and how to build wealth when they have all these other conflicts going on. So I'm still using all of that, in addition to just being a numbers person, data-driven, just looking at numbers and not being able to freak out when everybody else is just like, what is going on? So both of those I'm still using to this day.
So wealthyandfulfilled.com, your current business, is not probably where most people who start in the mechanical engineering field end up. Right. What was your big aha that made you realize this is the direction you were going to go?
Wealthy and Fulfilled started when I was 5, because I had my own envelope system before I was even in first grade. And it's something I've always been interested in. Books I was reading, personal development books, and books about how to make money. And even in college, when I was getting my degree in engineering, I was still in the investment club. I was still teaching finance classes. I just didn't know that was a career. It was doctor, lawyer, engineer. So I chose engineer, and was still doing that on the side, even after I graduated from USC. Fight on. I don't know if you appreciate that one, but that's fine.
Yes, that's the right one.
Oh, that's the right one. It's it's UCLA. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. But yes, so I was always doing it. They were actually running in tandem. And it wasn't until I decided to go full on into entrepreneurship that I knew that was always going to be my end goal, was doing something around personal finance, personal development. Everything in between the last 9 years was kind of getting me out of corporate financially so I can actually do what I feel like I was called to do since I was 5.
That's really cool. So see, at 5 years old, I was picking flowers and selling them. So apparently I was supposed to be in e-commerce from the beginning. But
there's always clues. There's always clues.
There is. And I agree with that. Now, one of your recent Instagram posts says building a business is not the same as building wealth through a business. One of a previous guest on the show, Sharon Lechter, who is the main author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and they talk about the cash flow quadrant. And I think I see so many entrepreneurs getting stuck as being self-employed and not really embracing business ownership. Like what is the difference of using business as a wealth creation tool, and just being stuck running a business?
So when you're building a business, we're all excited to reach certain revenue goals, and you're like, oh, we made, first 50K a month, 100K a month, 100K a week, 100K a day, whatever it is. But then it's like, well, what do you do with that money after that? And a lot of people just get stuck in the cycle of just building more, building more, building more. A lot of times at the beginning, smartly enough, we're reinvesting it back into the business. But what do we do with the money after it's made? Outside of that, for our lifestyle, for our legacy, for our kids, protecting ourselves should we get hurt. Those are all the things that we need to be doing with the money and the wealth that we're getting from the business to actually create wealth from what we're doing in our business versus just creating a business. Also using it in a way to grow your business where you can actually take yourself out of the business and do other things. And I know as entrepreneurs, we're mostly doing the things that we love to do. But maybe you don't want to do it every single day. Maybe you want to actually have a vacation where you don't have to bring your laptop with you, and things like that. So that's what I mean when I say building wealth through your business versus just building a business.
That makes sense. And where do you see some business owners making the biggest mistakes when it comes to being wealthy and fulfilled?
Going after just the wealthy part. And I think that's because that's what we see in our newsfeed all the time. Everybody's talking about how much money they've made. They're showing all their toys that they've gotten, which is awesome and great. But it's like, are you really enjoying your life? Are you missing out on maybe like your kids' celebrations or soccer games or all these things because you're always traveling for business or something like that? Is your marriage, is your health suffering because you're always working all the time? What are you leaving behind you besides just a bank account? And that's where I see a lot of people kind of fall short because we're just so ingrained with building. Where's the next client coming from? Who's the next team member I'm getting? Versus thinking outside holistically about all the different areas of our life. What are you doing with your health, your marriage, your kids, spiritually? What are you doing to grow yourself intellectually? Like all these different areas are all the areas that make us up as a person, not just business, not just finance. So it's looking at all of it together.
I think we're seeing a time, almost like a great awakening, where people are realizing that the holistic self is becoming more and more important. And I think there's always been self-actualization movements. There's always been growth. From my perception, more and more entrepreneurs that I talk to are at least aware, right? I feel like there's at least an awareness, like I need to take care of myself. One of the main reasons I got started with this radio show over a decade ago was around lifestyle design and the desire to actually do something deliberately, as opposed to just reacting every single morning, waking up and reacting. What are some of the early mistakes you made in your business, and what did you learn from those?
It's almost like, what mistake didn't I make in my business? So the first one that was glaringly obvious as I look back, not so much when I was in the moment, was just really just trying to replicate what other people were doing, not copying, like plagiarizing, but like, okay, my first business was working motherhood. I had a very successful podcast for working moms modeled after John Lee Dumas. Well, I didn't know that it was with a different niche. I might want to have a slightly different strategy because it's a smaller audience. At the time, sponsorships weren't as big for like motherhood podcasts as they were for entrepreneur podcasts. And so it's just like, I always thought if you model what the successful people do, you'll have the same result, which is true to a certain extent, but it's more so modeling their behaviors, not necessarily the exact outcome. And so it took me a long time to kind of learn to kind of piece together what I liked and what I didn't like and to make something that worked for me. So replicating too close what other people were doing as far as the business model itself. The other thing was...
keep going. I want to hear the next one.
The next thing was being a sucker for a well-designed sales page. I cannot tell you how many courses I've bought to this point. Some fantastic and have gotten me to this point, and others served more so as a lesson of what I do not want to do for my own students and members in regards to totally disregarding the lifestyle that they might have. I don't want to have 8-10 hour long videos for something that can be taught in 15 minutes. So it really was just kind of not necessarily taking a look at the results somebody was getting, but more so just getting wrapped up into like really good marketing and really good design and being like, basically putting like lipstick on a pig. It's like, it looks cute from the outside, but once you get in there, it's like, I knew all this stuff and not really trusting myself with what I knew already.
It's amazing how many info product businesses, coaching business, things like that, they focus first on the marketing before focusing on the actual deliverable or benefit or lessons or education.
Yeah.
And then a lot of these businesses think they have to make something long and complicated in order to have value. My friend Alex Ramosi was saying one of the best courses he ever bought was an expensive course, and it literally was one 15-minute video.
Yeah.
Like shot one time in like not broken up into thousands of chunks.
Yeah. Well, we want the transformation, right? Like we don't necessarily want the time I don't want it to be all bloated and full of all these worksheets just to say I did it. I want the end result. And I think it just took me a while to get to that point. But now I know it for my students where it doesn't have to be hours and hours of it. Like get in, get out, and get on with your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned your students, you mentioned the people you help. Who is it that you're wanting to help? Who should be checking out wealthyandfulfilled.com?
So our ideal client that we have the biggest transformation with are those who are in that 200K to about 900K, 7-figure or low 7-figure mark as far as revenue with their business. So they're not just starting off, but they're not at multi-millions yet, primarily because they're still at that stage where we can make the most transformation in regards to helping them tighten up their business financials and what that looks like so they can increase how much their take-home pay is, their profit distributions, and then organizing that to fund what we call their wealthy and fulfilled life. So at that point, they have enough to work with, but not quite to the point where they have like a full-on financial team, because we can get them set up and even get to the point where we can help them figure out who they need to hire and when to do it, and so that they feel comfortable doing that at that point.
So after hiring you, what is the person that most business owners need to hire to really be focusing on their wealth?
Well, outside of me, I would say the next one would be like a bookkeeper, like someone to just help them keep their books organized so they can stay on top of what the numbers are. Because that's one of the biggest mistakes that, unfortunately, I never really made this mistake being just a nerdy numbers geeky engineer from the beginning. But a lot of business owners are not properly tracking their numbers. So you don't even know how much is going out. I can't tell you how many people we've worked with that got their investment back right away just by helping them realize how many things they are buying per month, whether it's subscriptions or something that they are not using. In addition to figuring out maybe your team might be a little bit bloated. You're making 300K a year. You probably don't need to have like 6 or 7 different team members right now. Like you're just bleeding cash at this point. So figuring out how to track the numbers so you can then make data-driven decisions versus like, oh, I feel like I should be doing this next. Feelings are great. And I say go with your intuition, but it should be guided a little bit by what your numbers are saying.
See, I lean a lot harder the other way, where I'm like, your intuition should help you know where to look to see what data you should examine. But the data, if you're not making data-driven decisions, right? Like there's a lot of people that have poorly trained intuition, right? It's like, follow your gut. And I'm like, I think you just had a really bad burrito. Right? So
or a lot of social conditioning. Like you probably do know the answer, but it's probably
entrepreneurs bring a lot of baggage into their intuition. So I'm like, the intuition should help you decide where to look. Yeah. But then the data is where the decisions need to make, because we're human, right? Humans make emotional decisions and then justify it with data or justify it with logic and reason. So I have seen too many business owners only follow intuition and really limit themselves for a long time because they're just, they're leading with that. But that's just,
and both are important. That's why we focus too on the mindset and manifestation, because it's like, you have to tune into what feels right for you. But at the same time, it's just like you said, you have to kind of not necessarily justify it, but it helps to kind of look at the numbers as well to kind of tell that story, because it also helps you identify with, is this my intuition or is this my fear talking? Because a lot of times they look very, very similar, but they're very, very different.
Big time. And that I think is the thing. I think sometimes when we are faced with growth, we feel resistance, and that resistance can come off like, oh, I feel this doesn't feel right. Yeah. It's like, well, it could just be scary that you're taking that step, right? When people are just getting started to take their finances more seriously, they're taking a more pragmatic, Portia Jackson approach to their business. What is one of the first things that constantly trips them up? Like, where are they stumbling, and how do you help them get back on track?
Usually it's the mindset part. And I don't mean like, woo-woo mindset, which is fine for some people. It's just not my style, but more so I'm bad with money, or having a belief that this is not what they're good at, or I'm just going to have somebody else do that. And and not even knowing like really where to start with that. They just kind of feel like, well, I want to speak with someone, but I don't want to look stupid, or I want to speak with someone, but I'm so embarrassed or I'm so ashamed around that. When it's like everybody has some level of that with their money at some point in their life. Like everyone's special and everyone isn't, right? So that's how the same thing with the money too. Like everybody has these feelings. So that's all we always start with, like, well, what's your actual personality when it comes to dealing with money? Because I might love a beautifully color coded spreadsheet, but my husband does not. Like that would be, he's like, I'm not showing up to that. I'm not talking about that. He's more like, if we have money in the account, we're good to go. So when I bring it to him, he's more about, well, what's the possibilities? What's the fun we can have with this? What are the options that we can do with this? So he's much more big picture and much more detail oriented. So if me as a detail oriented person is trying to come talk with a new client of ours who's coming in that's not that way, I'm going to scare him off. So I always start with, how do you interact with money? What's your money personality? So I now know which lens to put on to explain everything else that it is that we're doing. And we do that based off the Enneagram test, which I'm obsessed with.
I love that you personalize things, right? Because how I receive and how I'm going to benefit is probably a lot closer to what you just described as your husband. And so if you're coming at me super like methodical, I might be able to hang with it for a little while,
right?
But I will have a lower chance of staying implemented with that over time, right?
Yes.
And if you want adaption and people to actually do that over time, it's got to be personalized. When you're working with a new client and you're helping them work through the wealthy and fulfilled process and all of that, what are some of the first things that you teach them?
Well, the first thing we teach them is, one, to identify, well, what's the core motivations, desires, fears of just their personality, because that, again, is going to frame everything else that we're doing. If you're someone that values security, I already know it's going to be pretty easy for you to save, but it might be a little bit harder to get you to invest at the level you need to invest to create the return you want to create. So we always start with their personality. Then step 2 is identifying and designing their lifestyle. Like, what does success, what does fulfillment look like to them? Because that's going to be so personal. It's going to look so different for me, who's a mom of 3, married with a doodle dog, right? Versus someone who might be single and 25 and wanting to like jet set around the world. Both of them are great, but we just have different lifestyles. So what does that look like? And we go through the different areas of life with them to define what that is. And then we put a number to that. So we now know what our goals are for step 3, which is where we move more into the personal financial planning. So the bigger areas such as investing, tax minimization, estate planning, insurance, cash flow planning, all those types of things. And then finally, we get them into more of the mindset, the manifestation, getting into the money stories, what might be blocking them from reaching these goals that we talked about in the previous steps. What are the things that they actually want to see actualize? How can we create those beliefs to support that? Because we do need a mix of the practical steps, but we also need to have that more, I don't want to say impractical, but more of the abstract thoughts around it as well. Because if your mind is saying you can't achieve it, it doesn't make a difference how many plans we put in place. You're going to figure out some way to sabotage that. I
really like the order that you go in. A lot of people start with mindset, but sometimes when you start with mindset, instead of starting with understanding the personality and all these things, right? You're playing without all the cards. So you get all the cards laid out and then you work through the rest. Are there any either tax minimization tips or any other tips that you think would be fun to share?
It depends, right? Like the number one financial
I'm skipping to number 3 though. That's the fun one for you.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the situation, right? Like we all live in different places and, we're in California, which is like tax up the wazoo. So as far as that, I would just say consult your financial professional.
All right. How about, let me zoom out farther. Is there anything that you would love to teach the audience and just kind of share? Say, hey, this, of course, it's got to be, you want to review it. Of course, it needs to be, customized and personalized and all the things. But is there anything that you could share and teach with us?
I mean, again, it is so individual, but I would say the number one thing is to know your numbers, however that looks for you. So we oftentimes, a lot of people we work with are very busy, right? We're building businesses, we're scaling businesses, we have family, we just have life. So we always create a dashboard where it's like one place you can go to see all of your numbers. You can see the personal side, what you're bringing in, what your expenses are. You can see the business side, what's your revenue? What are your expenses? What's your profit margin? So you can know your numbers, because the profit margin for a coaching and consulting business might look completely different than an e-com business or something like that. So I would just say, how in whatever style works for you, having one centralized place where you can see all of your numbers is a great start, because it's almost kind of like the dashboard on your car. right? Even if you're not a numbers person, you can look at that and know if you're going too fast. You can look at that to see if something is off, if something needs to get serviced, if you need to go to the gas station. It could work the same with your finances. Like we just have this emotional layer of fat over things when it comes to money that we don't have in other numerical parts of our life, that I'm like, let's just take it away, just look at the numbers and move on with your day. So I would just say have some way where you can just see what your numbers are at a very easy glance.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's important. And I agree. Sometimes you just have to look at the numbers without getting too emotional. Just like it's just data, right?
Yeah.
Got to make decisions, but got to start with the data. So as you transitioned into doing this, right? So you said you had a podcast on, kind of for moms first. How did you settle on this as the thing you're going to focus on? And then what are your offers within this business?
Yeah. So this started before I even started any of my online business. So I always knew the end game was having like a personal brand around personal finance, personal development. So I ended up here. The first step was working motherhood. That got me into the online world. That led me into coaching because I didn't know how to monetize it. The coaching led me into ads management and funnel building because I was in a coaching program where nobody knew how to read the back end of Facebook ads manager. And I was like, oh, this is super simple. Ended up doing it for all of them. Ended up building a super successful agency, wanted to niche down. It just made sense to do financial advisors since I am one myself. And from there, I was just like, great. I mean, I've had all this practice helping all these advisors, hundreds of advisors get their clients. Now it's time financially. I'm at the space to go and do what I've always wanted to do the past 9 years. And now we're here. And within Wealthy and Fulfill, we have 2 products. We have our Frisky Finances program, which is just teaching couples, significant others, randomly dating people, whoever, how to talk about money with each other when you have very different personalities or even very similar ones. So it's all about kind of creating that financial intimacy in your relationship so you can have those money date nights and talk about your money without it being avoided or whatever. And then we also have our Wealthy and Fulfill Blueprint, which is our 6-month group coaching experience for entrepreneurs that leads them through those 4 steps that we talked about before so that they can create their personalized wealth building system.
Awesome. Going into the I love that term, frisky finances. And it's true. So many couples struggle to even just have the conversations because it's like every conversation is a trigger to some other problem. What are some core principles that you teach? So
the core principle is to, 1, understand yourself first. And again, we do that through the Enneagram. Second is to understand your spouse or your partner, whoever this other person is. It could work for, sisters or whoever, but, frisky finances kinds of gets a little weird at that point.
Sure.
And then how do they combine? Because there's always going to be synergies between different personalities, regardless of how different they are. And then, of course, yes, you have your conflicts. So we talk about how can you maximize the synergies, minimize the conflicts. And then we have a date night, a financial date night outline that we walk them through on how you can start to incorporate this into your regular schedule, make it fun, make it where it's not intimidating. It's not going to be like this 3-4 hour long, let's get all of our numbers out and work through it. It's like, nope, chunk it down. This is what you're going to talk about on this date night. Follow it up, have a nice dinner, have a drink, watch a movie, do something, plan something fun afterwards. So you have that motivator to do that. And then kind of what to do after that.
That's smart. I think that's really cool. What I'm a big believer, and we've mentioned lifestyle design a lot on this interview. I'm a big believer that business is about building the life you want and not just a thing to occupy your time. Mm-hmm. For you, what's one item on your personal bucket list you're going to accomplish in the next 12 months?
Well, the big thing is going to be travel. It just depends on what's going on as far as our good old friend, Ms. Rona here.
So let's pretend that it doesn't exist. Where are we going?
If it doesn't exist, then we are going to be doing a Mediterranean cruise. We've been delaying this. We were going to do it for our 10-year anniversary. We've knocked the African safari off of our bucket list. So next up was this Mediterranean cruise. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to do that sometime soon because now we're going on year 12 of marriage. So it's going to be like
that 10-year anniversary.
It's the 10 plus 2, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. I had an Africa trip that got pushed back because of everything. I was supposed to be going right as everything hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bummer. It's hard when those things get pushed back, but it
is.
Slowly things are opening back up. What else? What other cool things are coming down the list for you that you want to do, be, or have?
Oh gosh. When we fluent in Spanish, I was in high school and then just never followed up with it. And then now I'm just like, there's a whole segment of people that I want to talk to one-on-one because I'm an introvert, but not in big crowds, but one-on-one, we can, talk it up there. But I would love to learn Spanish and have that opportunity to also travel and be immersed in that because I want that for my kids as well.
Yeah,
So
that's
lots of travel, but travel with my family.
Yeah, I enjoy both. I do. Some traveling by myself, I always joke like that's a vacation. That's where I recharge. Traveling with the family, I love because I love showing them the world.
Yeah.
I usually come back tired.
Oh yeah, no. When I say travel with the family, that includes travel nanny. Like that is my new thing. That's why I do what I do. That's part of being wealthy and fulfilled to me, is having a travel nanny, because I have 3 girls and they're 10, 8, and almost 4. My oldest has special needs. Like it's just a lot going on. Anytime all 5 of us go somewhere, it would just be nice to have somebody else do all that.
And if you want to relax and enjoy the experience instead of just, instead of running your routines, but somewhere cool.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. Yes, that's perfect. The description for that.
Well, this has been a ton of fun getting to know you a little bit more. And I hope everyone goes and checks out wealthyandfulfilled.com. You're also on Instagram as Wealthy and Fulfilled, which makes it nice and easy. So go everyone. I hope that you took a few of these takeaways and can approach your money a little bit, don't be stressed, but know your numbers.
Yep.
To our biz ninjas, wherever you are listening, watching, streaming, whatever it may be, it's your turn to go out and do something.
Thank you for listening to Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio with Tyler Jorgensen. Please make sure to subscribe so you're first to hear new interviews and episodes. If you found this podcast to be valuable, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to visit our online dojo at bizninja.com to claim your reward for listening to the show.